hey, you know what? You can disagree on this issue without calling the other side unpatriotic or rude. What O'Rourke did was to bring in the idea that, you know what? Peaceful protest is protected by our flag, our Constitution. That's an American ideal.
So, Lisa, you worked at the NRCC. Would this quote from Beto be a gift to the Republican NRCC or senatorial committee if they're looking at this race?
Well, I think you look at the majority of Americans, you look at poll after poll, or actually with Senator Ted Cruz on this issue. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're probably going to agree with him more. What I find frustrating about this is that President Trump's actually done a lot on the issue of criminal justice reform. So I think if these players were to choose to take this off the field, where they're actually working for, in the private sector for their business, so I actually don't think they have the right to the protest while they're on the clock and while they're working. But if they were to take this off the field, I actually think there would be areas of compromise with President Trump on criminal justice reform. So I find that a little bit ironic if they just took it off the field and actually had a conversation with him. I think it would produce something positive.
It's an interesting point. The president has touched on and weighed in heavily on prison reform many times. I mean, we think back just recently, yesterday, when he and Jeff Sessions actually were going back and forth. But you know what they met on at the White House was prison reform. And we don't know how fast things will go, but we know at the behest of some celebrities like Kim Kardashian and others that he is looking at certain issues. So, I mean, you don't want to take away from what's being done, but you bring up the point, and that's why I think it's really time for the players union to get involved in this. Like, somebody's got to figure out how they're going to settle this issue. We are now, we're doing Thursday Night Football right here on Fox. They're doing it in this studio that we do Outnumbered on. I mean, we're football watching people in my family. So it would be nice if they could figure this out. And as a person of color, if while they're on their knees, they could pray for the victims of domestic violence via those who have been accused in the NFL, since it's somewhat of a microcosm of the rest of society, I've been told. And drunk driving, or the victims of shooting and murders in Chicago. I mean, if you're going to make it about a prayer event, because remember, when Dr. King knelt, he also bowed. Peaceful protest, yes, but in prayer, too, why not take that as part of the mantra as well?
Pray for every family battling cancer, every individual in this country. One thing I'll point out about Beto O'Rourke taking this issue on, he's already jumped past Texas. He's working on a national stage. You take this stand maybe because you want to get invited over to LeBron James' house the next time you're in Ohio, maybe, or Los Angeles, but you take it on because you're building up a run for higher office.
But Dagan, there's a political adage that says you got to win the race you're in first. So the question,
you would know, because she's married to a congressman who wins. All right, stand by. We'll be right back. That's not just the words of the president. That's what he's done.
Right. No, that seems to be pretty clear at this point. And exactly what the motivation isn't entirely clear just yet. The media person that was granted immunity apparently will corroborate Cohen's version regarding Trump's involvement in the payments. Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization, it's a little more unclear exactly what he has to say. It might simply be that he was there to help get the goods on Cohen. And so it's just one step in a chain. Or, since it was a grant of immunity, not just a promise for a reduced sentence, it may very well be that he, in charge of all the financial dealings of the Trump Organization, may have a lot more information, including information that directly implicates President Trump. It's just not clear yet.
This seems to be like a staccato pickup since the Manafort and Cohen convictions and deal making that went on. David Pecker yesterday with the parent company that owns the National Enquirer, and reports of a safe filled with stories on all sorts of celebrities, including then citizen Donald J. Trump. And then you've got Weisselberg in the last little while. What do you make of how the cases are being laid out? As a former prosecutor, is this how it gets done?
Essentially, yes. I mean, you start out with people on the periphery, and you get them to either get convicted or to plead guilty, and you get their cooperation, and you use that information to go up the chain to get more and more significant people if you are in fact convinced that there is a criminal conspiracy. So I think the fact that the pace is picking up is just simply the fact that this strategy on the part of Mueller and the Southern District of New York prosecutors may be working right now. One interesting question will be, to what extent will there be information relating to state law charges against some of these people? And that's legally significant because the president's pardon power does not extend to state law crimes.
All right, so what you've seen so far with Cohen and Manafort and perhaps Pecker and Weisselberg, if those cases, but they've now struck deals to immunity, so you wouldn't imagine that those would go anywhere legally. But if the president wanted to pardon anyone, you're saying that we're still within that zone with the previous two men. State law charges then tend to change that. You know, as we look ahead in all of this, the president, though, does have something to consider as he is being asked to sit down with Robert Mueller in the Russia investigation, and that is, by all of these people talking and staying focused on some of the issues of payments to different people, and none of which have been proven to be a crime, paying women to be quiet about an affair, unless they're linked to politics and the election, and we haven't seen evidence of that. But the president can legitimately say, well, you've talked to everybody who can answer every other question. Why should I sit down? Like, it doesn't make him necessarily specific enough as a witness for Bob Mueller to force him into that seat with or without a subpoena.
Right. Well, on the one hand, Rudy Giuliani and President Trump can argue that it's not advantageous for President Trump to sit down and be interviewed because they suspect that this is all just some sort of perjury trap. On the other hand, Mr. Mueller is going to be able to say, I think with some legitimacy, that there are certain questions regarding the president's state of mind and the exact sequence of events, particularly regarding any obstruction of justice charges that was happening behind closed doors, that only President Trump can answer. And, you know, typically you would want to conclude that interview before you finished your own investigation. So on the one hand, President Trump is saying, quickly conclude your investigation, but Mr. Mueller is saying, I don't want to do that until I do my last interview, which would be you.
Sure. As a former federal prosecutor, should the president sit down? And I say this because you would actually be in the seat of trying to extract that extra information. Should he sit down with Bob Mueller?
If I were President Trump's lawyers, I might advise against it. If I were a prosecutor, I would probably insist on it. And so if there is this loggerheads, then what will happen will be Mr. Mueller might try a subpoena. And then there's going to be a legal question about whether you can subpoena the President of the United States. Applicable Supreme Court precedent seems to suggest that you can subpoena a president regarding a criminal investigation. But on these specific facts, of course, we don't have a court ruling.
You didn't exactly answer my question, but I get it. All right, Stephen, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Fox News alert on this, the escalating war of words between President Trump and his own attorney general. The president and Jeff Sessions going back and forth at each other in a very public battle over the attorney general's recusal from the Russia investigation. The president tweeted this most recently. Department of Justice will not be improperly influenced by political considerations. He's quoting Jeff Sessions there. And then he says, Jeff, this is great. What everyone wants. So look into all of the corruption on the other side, including deleted emails, Comey lies, leaks, Mueller conflicts, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Orr. The president going on to list other scandals tied to Democrats and ending with, quote, come on, Jeff, you can do it. The country is waiting. Meanwhile, Republicans are warning if the president fires Sessions, he won't be able to replace him right away. Let's bring in Mark Lauder, who served as a special assistant to President Trump and a former press secretary for Vice President Pence. Mark, great to see you today.
Great to see you, Harris.
Actually, the ball may have moved on that, because if there's an opening for Capitol Hill, lawmakers on Capitol Hill to take a look at making some time for any sort of confirmation and replacement of Jeff Sessions, that may have changed the game. Your thoughts?
Well, and it could very well do that. Obviously, the Senate has warned for a while that they don't have a full calendar right now, and one will not that would open up for a appointment of a new attorney general. And in the meantime, Rod Rosenstein would be the acting attorney general, according to the current system, where it moves to the next person in line. So you could, but I don't see anything happening definitely before the midterms. And then after the midterms, obviously, it would be up to the president and or Attorney General Sessions to decide.
Mark, have the politics of supporting Jeff Sessions, someone who is very liked in the Senate, changed all of a sudden? I mean, you've got Senator Lindsey Graham saying the president should be able to choose and can choose whomever he wants in that position. And then maybe this sort of potential opening on the calendar that you may take a peek and see if you have time for confirmation should the president fire Sessions. Is something shifting?
I think there's a growing frustration amongst many Republicans that we seem to have a double standard when it comes to investigations. You see all the investigations and the ad nauseum commentary of everything going on with the president and Republicans all across mainstream media. But then time and time again, as the president outlined in those tweets today, we see nothing about the alleged abuses, alleged crimes that possibly were committed on the Democrat side. And it just seems like it's being brushed under the rug. So I know that frustration is taking hold not only with the president as he voices that, but also amongst many Republicans, and that continues to Capitol Hill.
Why would it be brushed under the rug? I should say the Attorney General is also a Republican senator previously. Why would he brush it under the rug?
And that's the question. That's what you saw with the president's tweet today saying, come on, Jeff, you can do this. Because why is it that the Clinton emails, the Uranium One, the dossier, the FISA, all of those, and I don't know if we do know the answer to that. Some of those are being looked at by the Inspector General in the Department of Justice, and that's great, but that's only looking toward their internal conduct. It's not looking at whether those were actual crimes committed. So one has to wonder why we're having this double standard when it applies to things that Republicans may have done versus things that Democrats may have done.
You know, this is being talked about in terms of whether the go back and forth, the president sitting down or not with Bob Mueller, and all of this. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, is he out, is he in, before the midterms would actually have an effect. Can you drill this down to what the American people really need to know about all of it?
Well, to be honest, I don't think the American people are following it as closely as we do in Washington, D.C. or in New York. They're more worried about the economy. High school football is getting started across the country, and you've got so many things that people, jobs and growing paychecks. Those are the things that are mattering to the American people. And so I think a lot of this is just tuned out as being noise and nonsense. But we do have a frustration, especially amongst Republicans, about this perceived double standard. And I think what you're seeing is that the president recognizes it. He sees it. He hears it when he's traveling around the country. And in this case, he takes it to Twitter to make sure that he understands that he shares that frustration. And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just going to ask about Twitter, because if most Americans are not as in tune with this, do you need to then focus them on all of it with a tweet? And from what I hear you saying, that, yeah, you do if you think that it's not being treated fairly legally.
I think the president has a unique ability in the way he uses social media to connect with many people across America who might be talking about the double standard when they're around their dining room tables or enjoying a weekend cocktail with their friends. These are the kinds of conversations. When the president sees that, he's actually identifying as one of them, going, I share your concerns, whether it's on this, whether it's about the economy, whether it's about what's going on around the world. And so it's a connection point to him, but also saying, I want to get something done about it.
All right. Mark Lauder, always great to see you. Thank you very much for your perspective and experience on this. Fox News Alert now. Reaction is continuing to pour in, following the announcement that Senator John McCain will no longer seek medical treatment for his brain cancer. The McCain family saying the senator has surpassed expectations for his survival, but that the disease and his age are rendering their verdict. Peter Doocy. More now from the Hill, right outside Senator McCain's office. Peter?
Harris, the last time Senator McCain voted here in the Senate was December. The details of his treatment have been kept mostly private while he's been in Arizona, but today his office did announce John has surpassed expectations for his survival, but the progress of disease and the inexorable advance of age render their verdict. With his usual strength of will, he has now chosen to discontinue medical treatment. McCain's work with everybody in the Senate is what earned him the nickname a Maverick. And a longtime Democratic colleague of his here, John Kerry, said just now, God bless John McCain, his family, and all who love him. A brave man showing us once again what the words grace and grit really mean. The Senate's Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says, very sad to hear this morning's update from the family of our dear friend John McCain. We are so fortunate to call him our friend and colleague. John, Cindy, and the entire McCain family are in our prayers at this incredibly difficult hour. Shortly after announcing that he was sick with brain cancer, McCain gave very reflective remarks on the Senate floor, but he did insist he was not saying goodbye.
I have every intention of returning here and giving many of you cause to regret all the nice things you said about me. And I hope to impress on you again that it is an honor to serve the American people in your company. Thank you, fellow senators.
And just a few minutes ago, McCain's wife, Cindy, tweeted to say God bless you to everybody that has taken care of her husband for the last few months. Harris.
Peter, thank you. Many people on this network know that Megyn and I are close. I love her so much. We connect on a level of being military brats because of our dads. Today, as we are learning this news, it's information, as she would always tell me, and we take that information.